Hello, welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm, Monday, the 21st of July. And the thirst for transfer news is real. I am delighted to be joined by my good friend, Sam Dean of the Telegraph. Sam, welcome to the firm. How are you, my man?
Yeah, really good. Thanks very much for having me on again. It's been a while actually since I came on. So yeah, always good to get the invite and to see you. So yeah, thank you.
You're very kind, my friend. Listen, we want to go straight into the transfer chat. We're going to talk about Viktor Gyökeres. Where is he? Where is our gunman? We'll talk about your thoughts on the Arteta sort of transfer window so far. Andrea Berta obviously doing bits as well. Then we'll talk about potential contract extensions. You broke the news about Ethan Nwaneri finally getting it over the line. Want to get your thoughts on maybe a couple of others. And we'll take a close look at Liverpool because they are moving mad this window, Sam. So I want to get all your thoughts on that. But before we kind of progress on to any of that transfer spec, our new away shirt has been launched today. Are you one for fresh garms? Do you think it's got the sauce? Do you like the sort of banner that I've got in the background behind us?
Yeah, this is one of those things. So I'm not. I think most people know I'm not an Arsenal fan. It's just kind of it's business, not pleasure for me. But obviously, covering the club, you get really invested in like the team, who they're signing, what they're doing, how they're doing. But the one thing I've literally never ever cared about is the kit stuff, and that's on me. There's no judgment for people who do care about it. But yeah, I simply, if you said to me, "Oh, what was the away kit in 2019?" I'd really have to wrap my brain on that. The only thing I remember is that black away kit 22-23, the one that's like iconic. That was the only one where I've gone, that is a proper kit. But yeah, apart from that, it doesn't move me. Are you moved by it? Did it does it move you?
I'm in. I'm all in. I want the lot. I want the sambas. I want the bags. I want the shirts. I want the baby kits for the kids. I'm going to be a full kit person on day one. I cannot wait for it. And do you know what? The sort of vertical zigzags that will make me look slimmer as well. I'm all in, mate. I'm all in.
Is it not very, very similar to the one from the year that you lost to Brentford on opening day? I can picture Ben White in this kit.
Oh, yeah, there was something similar, and people have also talked about the Bergkamp kit back in the with sort of lightning strikes with Nike. Do you remember the light blue ones? I think I've got that somewhere. There are similarities. They kind of go around in circles, don't they? And they sort of recycle stuff. But I think this is an absolute banger. It's not for everyone. There are a few, I would say, older fans who aren't keen, not the traditional Arsenal colours and all that sort of stuff, but it is so good. I love it. I love it. Welcome to the chat, one and all. Everybody's watching. Hundreds of you already tuning in live on YouTube. Please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and get involved. And we will go to the chat as often as we can. Sam, thanks for making the time. There is only one place to start the conversation, and that is, where is Viktor Gyökeres? You've seen all the news over the weekend. Plane watching has begun. Manchester United in, out. We're negotiating for add-ons. What's your stance? Where is he?
I think on the plane watching front, no, as I say, I'm not an Arsenal fan, so I'm not biased on this. No one does this stuff like Arsenal fans do. I mean, they're in a league of their own when it comes to this thing. I mean, where is he? I mean, the more relevant question is, he's not in Singapore. That's what we know. And that was obviously what Arsenal wanted, to have him out there with the team, getting up to speed, learning the patterns of play, getting to know his new teammates. And that has not happened, which I think, I think if you'd said to Mikel Arteta, his coaching staff, and 60,000 fans at the Emirates Stadium on the last day of the season, you won't have a striker in time for pre-season tour, I think people will be pretty disappointed and annoyed. But I think given how far down the line this is now and how seemingly close it is to a conclusion, I think people are generally okay with it. And you could see from Arteta's press conference today, like, the mood was pretty good. And he used the word yet, which I think carried a lot of weight. I'm sure you saw that. So I think, I mean, as far as I know, and I don't, this is certainly not new information, I don't think, to anyone, but as far as I know, it's just those final details and the boring stuff. And I think, as journalists and as fans as well, we all watch and look at transfer fees and think, okay, so £69 million for Hugo Ekitike or whatever. But actually, so much of it comes down to, like, when are you paying it? How much are you paying in that installment? How much in that installment? What's the add-on worth? And when will the add-on payments be due? And all that kind of stuff. It's really dull, really dry. And that, as far as I understand it, that's the kind of place Arsenal are at with Sporting. That the framework's there, but it's all to do with percentages and add-ons and timings and installments and all that stuff, which the kind of thing which I very rarely, as a journalist, and most journalists very rarely get a full readout of what that is. At the end, we'll get a sort of 65 plus 10 euros or whatever it is. But it's all the little fiddly bits that slow things down. And on that topic, so I know I'm rambling already, but one thing I've been told by quite a few agents in the last couple of years is that Arsenal, of all clubs, are really, really hot on the details and going through the paperwork, and like the lawyers go through it with a really fine tooth comb, which I think is great. And that's what fans would want to hear, that Arsenal are careful with their money and cautious. But I think generally speaking, and this is the view of people in the industry who have dealt with them, generally speaking, deals do take a bit longer to get done with Arsenal than they do with other clubs, say. So that might be a factor here too, but it also might be a case that Sporting, who always drive a really hard bargain, are just being difficult, which is, that's their prerogative and that's their job as a company with shareholders and trying to impress people.
Yeah, listen, you can understand why a club wouldn't want to let go of its crown jewels, but I think the pursuit is always frustrating for an Arsenal fan because, like you say, Sam, they seem to take forever and ever to get done. I think sometimes you just have to accept that sometimes these negotiations can be complex. We're talking about a big signing, a big asset, a lot of money for Arsenal Football Club. We've not really splashed the cash. We haven't got a habit of doing that. Declan Rice was an exception. We've had a couple of £50 million plus players in the past, but this is relatively new territory for us. So really excited about it. Was there ever any interest from Manchester United in these sort of last 24, 48 hours? Is this negotiation tactics from Sporting, do you think?
The honest answer to that question is I don't know how serious that was. I think everyone knows, and it's quite widely known, that United did have some interest earlier in the summer. But I think it's actually irrelevant based on the fact that Gykeres has made it so clear where he wants to go. It doesn't matter whether that was a pressuring tactic or genuine interest, because that's not what Gykeres wants. So whatever impact it might have had won't work, because he's made it clear, as far as I understand it, that he wants to join Arsenal. So that's that, really, if you put it in those kind of blunt terms. And just quickly on the point about things taking a really long time, I'm a little bit biased on this, and people who cover other clubs might disagree angrily with what I'm about to say, but I think part of the issue is that a lot of really good journalists, and I don't include myself in that, are covering Arsenal and finding out who they want to buy. I think if Arsenal had it their way, they would announce Martin Zubimendi with no hype at all, no build-up, and it'd be like a massive deal out of nowhere. But us journalists keep stopping them. And you had Sammy Matbull on the show, haven't you? And Sammy obviously got that story months and months in advance, which is brilliant journalism. But that's the issue in a way, that us journalists, to feed the fans who are so desperate to find out what's going on, are really working hard to sort of find out who the targets are, how the talks are going, all those sorts of things. Arsenal don't really want this out. They want to drop this like a bomb on people's heads in a nice way, but we keep stopping them. And I say we, obviously there are far better transfer journalists out there than me, but we're all doing our best. And I think that might not always be the case at other clubs. I think at Arsenal is a really good patch of journalists. But yeah, I'm very biased, very biased.
No, I appreciate that. And just thoughts on the player finally, just before you do that. Assad, thank you so much for your very generous donation to the channel. So still no Gyökeres, still no sign of sales, no official announcement on the Mosquera or Ethan Wanieri contract. We'll come to those later. Could you ask Sam who you think we might sell, and who does he think Eze or someone else might come in? Again, we'll come on to those shortly, but Assad, thank you so much. You've just caught my eye with that. Thoughts on Gyökeres? We've been long after a centre forward, Sam. Is he the answer?
I'm trying very hard not to think too negatively of it. I think it's a massive risk. And I've written a piece to that effect, which will go live hopefully when this is all done, assuming it does indeed get done as expected. I'm worried a little bit about the Portuguese league. I know it sounds like an old discussion point now that everyone's been doing for weeks and weeks, but I think it's real, and I think it's relevant. And if you look at the sort of the players who have come over to England for big money moves to big clubs like Arsenal, or also to lower clubs, they very, very rarely kind of hit anywhere near the numbers they would hit in Portugal. So that for me is a bit of a concern. I also think his age at 27 would make it a bit harder to sort of shift him on if things don't go particularly well. I mean, you look, for example, at Liverpool getting Ekitike. It's a bigger fee, and it's a player who's less polished, I think. But if in 2 years' time it hasn't really worked out, you think there's probably still quite a big market for him. And I think we've seen that with Darwin Núñez. Obviously, he's not got a transfer yet, but at Liverpool, he could easily get a move, and there's strong interest from Napoli earlier in the summer, for example, because his age, he was sort of bought young enough for that to be the case. So I do worry a bit on that front. I think Arsenal will really need this to work. They can't sort of get out of this one easily if it doesn't work. But clearly they think it will. And one thing we know, and I think we've reported at Telegraph quite a few times, is that Andrea Berta really, this is his guy. But Gykeres is the one that Berta wanted. So his own kind of standing is, a lot of it's been built and a lot of chips been placed on Gykeres. So he must have a lot of faith in it. And Arsenal would never do this deal if they didn't believe it was going to improve the squad. What I don't know is if it improves the squad or if it definitely improves the starting 11, because, people sort of sneer at Kai Havertz, but he's a really good football player. And crucially, he's absolutely loved by Mikel Arteta. I think, we've all seen that. When Kai Havertz is fit, Kai Havertz pretty much always plays. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how many games Gykeres actually starts if both players are fit. And I think it wouldn't be a huge surprise at all if Gykeres is a really good squad player, comes off the bench a lot, impact player, plays in the cups and stuff, but isn't necessarily that starting number 9 top guy. But I could be wrong. Just my view.
Wow. Well,
my view is not worth much. I promise you that.
Well, you've seen my face has just dropped into seriousness. But I think, look, on the one hand, I completely hear you, Sam. I recognise that he's played in the Primera Division. It's not an elite league in football. Of course, prior to that, he was in Coventry down in the Championship for a couple of years. And his goal scoring record, as prolific as it is, everyone's talking about, well, listen, if he gives us half that return, that's going to be a pretty good thing. He's not going to motor at the pace that he's been doing so in Portugal. That said, when you think about the physical quality that he brings, the speed and the power and the ball striking, these are things that actually Arsenal just lack. As much as I love Kai Havertz, as much as I love Gabi Jesus, who's just unfortunately just never available for us, this is a player who brings that in abundance. And whether he's part of a squad, and it has to be a squad game, we've got so many fronts that we want to compete on. There's pressure on the club to deliver. I hope it kind of works out. And actually, you're spot on about the fact that it's a bit of a gamble. Every signing is a gamble. Sure. We've never, Sam, had the luxury of, writing players off and just going out and getting a new shiny toy just when we feel like it. We've had so many struggles in selling players over the years because they've been on long, generous contracts, and we've had to kind of see it out. So you're absolutely right. But what we're hearing is that the finer details are yet to be agreed. There is hopefully going to be an announcement at some point very, very soon. Lots of people in the chat very, very excited about Gykeres. They're not going to let you sway them on this one, Sam.
Can I just, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate a bit. And to be clear, I really hope he does well. I think it'd be great. I think the idea of a load of fans at the Emirates doing it will be a lot of fun, and I think it would be great for Arsenal and even the brand stuff and all that kind of thing if he does really well. So I hope he does. But just on your point about the physicality, I agree that is kind of something that Arsenal are missing. But I'm curious to see whether his physical advantages that he has and has demonstrated in Portugal are also applicable in the Premier League against a higher quality and a bigger, stronger defender. Is he great at bullying average defenders in Portugal, and can he bully top defenders in the same way, or by coming here does he lose that physical advantage that he has over defenders in Portugal? It's really interesting. And you mentioned if he scores half the goals that he's got in Portugal, that's really successful, and I totally agree. If he does that, he'll have exceeded the sort of translation rate that most Portuguese strikers have had coming to England. The average, I did the stats in the last 15 years, the average is about 62% drop off in terms of goals scored. So if you find out whatever 62% of his goals were last year, that's your prediction of how many goals he gets this season.
Well, 39 goals in the Primera Division, 36 with his right foot, 3 with his left. 60% of that. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's coming over. Sorry?
None with his head.
None with his head. That is right. You blamed it on the fullbacks, though, to be fair. Right, let's move on from Viktor Gyökeres, hopefully on his way, and hopefully a transfer bomber from you or your esteemed colleagues in the hours and days to come. Let's wait and see what happens. Sam, we're very much open for business. You tweeted, as you can see on screen there, if all goes to plan over the next few days, Arsenal have made 6 first-team signings before the start of their pre-season tour. That's never happened before at Arsenal in 23 years. Sadly, it hasn't happened this time because we're just a couple short. But
all did not go to plan.
It did not go to plan. However, we are open for business, and in Kepa, in Zubamendi, in Norgard, and in Madueke, we've made 4 announcements. Gyökeres, it feels like, is imminent, and Christian Mosquera, of course, with the images leaked, apparently paperwork sort of just being finalised. What do you make of the window? If those are the 6, we'll talk about 1 or 2 more next, but those 6 in the bag, assuming we get all 6 over the line, should Arsenal be pleased with that activity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't deny the sort of impressive nature and the speed of the business. As I say that in that tweet, that this is pretty much record breaking for Arsenal. This is unprecedented level of activity by this point of a transfer window, and I think that's kind of speaks volumes for Andrea Berta's sort of ability to get deals done. And one of the reasons he got the job in the first place was because he'd spent 12 years getting deals done, finding a way to get these over the line in all sorts of different contexts, all sorts of different players, different ages. It wasn't like he was just recruiting 21-year-olds from Argentina or whatever. He was getting all sorts of different players, and he could do loads of different deals. And he's come in and he has, I think, kind of exceeded everyone's expectations externally in how quickly Arsenal have moved and done things. But I like to think of the transfer window, if you kind of assess it, you can in 3 ways. One is identifying the players, 2 is getting the deals done, and 3 is then ingratiating them and getting them in the team and performing well. As it stands, you can only judge them on one of those things, and that's getting the deals done. And on that front, it's a great success, I think, so far. They've pretty much got the players they wanted, as far as we're aware. So that's very exciting for Arsenal. Obviously, whether they pick the right player, we'll find out in time. And also whether Arteta can work with them in the right way, we'll also find out in time. But for now, all we can judge Berta on is getting those deals done. And you have to say he's done it really efficiently. Although with the caveat that Zubimendi was done before his arrival. That was an Edu Gaspar and Jason Ato production rather than a Berta one.
Listen, and that's fair. That's fair. I think that's recognised by a lot of people in the Arsenal fan base. Berta has come in, inherited, the remnants of what was started, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ago. These things are very complex and they could take a lot of time, as we know, and we've discussed at the start of the show. But he has come in. He's had to deal with, obviously, a coaching change set up with Carlos Cuesta going, Gabby Heinze coming. I'm not saying that was all him, of course, but he was part of it. He had to get it over the line. We've talked about some of the signings that he sort of made. He's now got to sell. So going back to Assad's question, we'll come on to contracts in just a second. Are you expecting any movement outgoing, Sam, from Arsenal over the next 4 or 5 weeks?
You would certainly hope so. And I think if there isn't any movement outgoing, then that would be against the club's wishes and probably a failing on their part. So, I mean, I think the obvious candidates, you can list on the top of your head, Lokonga, I think, is likely to go. Zinchenko, I think, could be actually a bit more tricky. Reece Nelson, I think, probably will go.
Why is the Zinchenko, sorry to interrupt, why is the Zinchenko one so tricky? Is it simply a case of his wages?
I think that's a big part of it. Also, he's in London, he's happy, he's settled, his family here, he's got young kids here. 1 year left as well. So for him, you could easily see potentially the value of waiting 1 more year on a good contract at a great club in London, and then obviously being a free agent next year gives him a lot more freedom. So I think for him it would need to be kind of a really good move, which is very possible that he'll get that. I've always been a big fan of Zinchenko. I think anyone who sort of followed me will know that. I'm kind of weirdly obsessed with how he plays. I think he's great, despite the obvious weaknesses. Not saying he should start every game, but I think he's offers a lot of value still. So yeah, I think that one, just based on some of the sort of the names and clubs that have been linked to him and sort of checking those out, and I just don't think that's kind of moving the dial in the way you might expect. So that could be a bit trickier, but let's see. It's quite a long way to go. Who else have I not said? Who's the obvious one? Fabio Vieira, probably.
Yeah, Fabio
Vieira. I don't see really a space for Fabio Vieira in the squad. I mean, they moved him out last year to create space for Ethan Nwaneri, and Ethan Nwaneri signed a 5-year deal, so that's not changed. Who else have I missed? I don't foresee Kivior going from the latest I was told. But again,
Trossard and Martinelli. Any truth in that?
Trossard and Martinelli. Well, that's the juicy one, isn't it? Because I think that, and we'll come on to this, I think, but that, as far as I understand it, kind of holds the key to what Arsenal can do next. Which also just makes sense logically when you look at the squad and the 2 players per position, really, and like you can't just stock it full of really great left wingers or left-sided attackers. You have to be sort of creating space and creating sort of room in the budget as well. So I think that's an interesting one. We'll have to see what kind of interest there is and how strong it is, and whether Trossard and Martinelli fancy it, really, because they're both, as far as I'm aware, pretty settled and happy and playing for one of the best clubs in the world. And you look at Arsenal's record with sales, and I'm sure everyone watching knows that it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's really bad. Like, it's really bad over the past 15, 20 years. And I think partly because it's a really nice place to play football. It's a place to live. it's a great place to be. It's hard to sort of.
And they're on good wages, Sam. They're on good wages. It's a great. Okay. But it's a great standard of life. You know, you're paying for a top club. You know, you're living in one of the best cities in the world. You're on a good wage. We're in a really weird place because we've always sort of been sort of 3rd to 6th, 3rd to 8th over the last sort of 5-10 years or whatever. And they're just comfortable, and they're never going to get that move up, and they don't want to take that move down. So they're just really comfortable where they are, and it's very difficult to do. You talk about. Sorry, go on.
Cut you off. Arsenal historically, I don't think they've been very good at making tough decisions on this kind of thing. I think Arsenal's instinctive as a club, and I don't mean just this current leadership team, but going back quite a long time, have generally been like, if a player is doing well, they will do their absolute best to reward them with a new contract and keep them and tie them down. Whereas other clubs have been more ruthless and gone, well, I look at Coutinho at Liverpool. It's a perfect example. He was their best player for a bit, and they were like, you know what, this deal we're getting from Barcelona, let's do it. Let's rebuild with it. It's a hard decision to make. And at the time, I'm sure plenty of Liverpool fans were very upset and annoyed by it. But those are the kind of calls you have to make sometimes to sort of build it. And I don't think Arsenal have historically done that. And there've been plenty of chances to do it, and they haven't. So it'd be interesting to see how that changes going forward, and how ruthless Berta is, for example, at doing that.
Indeed. Liverpool are still spending the Coutinho money. There's a joke there. Colleen says Arsenal need to get better at selling, managing players who they will show the door in the months prior. Chelsea seem to make it look easy. Granted, some of our players are harder to shift. A couple of comments here about Gunny Guna says also the renewals that are important from Andrea Berta, and he's done a great job at that. But let's talk about, might there be more for us? Your mate, Matt, has broken the story today, or broken a story about Javi Simmons being linked to a move to Chelsea, apparently available. Arsenal in the background monitoring. Let's get your thoughts on that. And you kind of alluded to the fact that if we sell one of our valuable assets, there could maybe be one more on the cards for us. How do you think these dominoes are going to fall, Sam?
Yeah, tricky one. I think, I mean, look, Matt Law is one of the absolute top reporters, if not the top reporter on football news in the country. And his story tonight is that Chelsea are sort of made a check on Simmons, and that the players sort of open to it, with Arsenal kind of in the background, which suggests to me that Chelsea are ahead of Arsenal when it comes to Simmons. And I think that makes sense, given that Chelsea are churning players more, as we know. That's sort of now how they operate. And I think, for example, Christopher Nkunku, from what I can read and what I can see, is unlikely to stay at Chelsea. He's barely played in the past sort of couple of years. So you can see more vacancies opening up more easily at Chelsea than you can at Arsenal, which would presumably not help Arsenal's cause on Simmons. I mean, for what it's worth, I'm not aware of Simmons being sort of an absolute top target priority. I'm pretty sure Arsenal like him, and as Matt's reported, they're in the background looking at the situation. But I'm not aware of him being, seen as the guy. And actually, to be honest, and this is going to go down really badly, I think, I'm also not aware personally of that being true of Eze either. I know.
Samuel, what are you doing?
Just because I'm not aware of it doesn't mean it's not true. That's the very
of course.
Anyone, the aggregators, I'm looking at you. I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm saying I've not heard anything really to suggest in the past sort of few weeks that this is advancing in a sort of positive direction for Eze to Arsenal. For what it's worth, I think he'd be he's just pure Arsenal to me. I think he's the kind of player who they need for so many of those games against deep blocks, and I'd love to see him in an Arsenal shirt. But everything I've kind of been told for pretty much throughout this summer has made me really doubt whether it's possible.
But surely he moves, though. I mean, Tottenham are there.
That was the case last year. Everyone thought he'd move last year, and he didn't. It's a really tricky one. I wonder if clubs are seeing something that we're not, as fans and people who watch the game and see the skills and the passing and the range of, the vision and the goal scoring. I wonder if they're seeing things that we're not. I hope that's not the case, and I hope he comes to Arsenal, because I'd love to see it. But as I say, as it stands, I'm pretty lacking in confidence that this one could happen, to be honest. And I hope I'm proved wrong.
I hope you are too, as is the chat. I mean, Ram just saying you haven't made it easy for us. Dave saying, Sam, damn it, the dream killer with the tears. I mean, look, it's one we have to watch. There were talks, of course, or there were stories about Arsenal Arteta meeting the Eze camp while he was away on holiday in the Maldives. And look, we wait and see. We've seen him playing chess with Richard Branson. So we're all putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 7. But I hope this one goes through because of that Arsenal link. And I'm quite romantic when it comes to that. An ex-Arsenal Academy boy is an unfinished story there to be written. 2K Dave, thank you so much. Go on.
There's also just that. I think Arsenal got some great attackers and creative players, but sometimes they're lacking that bit of spark. And I think Arteta's called it magic moments. And I look at Eze and think, yeah, maybe he's not the most like reliable presser of the ball, or maybe he's not the best guy for like building up in patterns of play because he's a bit more free. But sometimes when you watch them against like Ipswich at home, you think they need a guy who can unpick a lock and do something and beat a guy and take a risk on the ball. And I look at that and think that's somewhere in the squad I would target personally, but there needs to be space for it. And I mean, the one thing this is purely my own opinion, it's not based on information, is could it be argued that if, say, Trossard went, you could bring in Eze as a left-sided player to replace that void? Because Trossard comes in quite a lot, he plays in the spaces on that in the pockets, because you've also got Madueke as a left wing cover for Martinelli too, so you'd have 3 out-and-out wingers in the squad plus Eze and Waneri who can come in and play in those gaps. So that's what maybe gives me a little bit of hope, the possibility of maybe them seeing Trossard out, Eze in, and as a viable thing to do. But I genuinely have no information to suggest that's how they see Eze and his role potentially in the squad. I genuinely don't know.
Okay. Monday Blues with Sam. At least you got the memo about the new kit.
I know.
It's in line with the new kit. It's all good.
Can I jump in? I know I'm rambling now. Can I jump in to say the Mosquera deal looks great, I think, for that price, and his experience already looks like a great deal. Christian Norgard, I've done quite a lot of Brentford in the past few years. Norgard's a really good player, like really good player. I think Zubimendi could be the signing of the season in the whole Premier League.
Ooh, there's a shout.
He could be.
Why so?
Phenomenal for Arsenal. I think just the he so clearly identifies with Arteta's style, and the way that Arteta sees the game and the way he plays the game. And I watched him against Portugal in that Nations League final and just thought, that is a serious player. So I'm not trying to sort of pour cold water on everyone's heads about this window. Obviously, I'm a bit unsure on Gykeres, as I've said, and I don't think it's likely that Eze is coming as it stands. But I do think they've done some really interesting business, and the vibes are good. Don't worry. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you.
Still got the Monday Blues, but it's the away kit. Let me just go on to that. Okay, cheer us up with contract renewals.
Yeah.
Ethan Waneri, you, I think, were one of the first journos to break the story that he'd actually signed and the length of the contract, and then lead me to the conversation about what the club are doing around Saliba and Saka.
Yeah, I mean, last we know about Saliba and Saka is that Arsenal want to get that done, and they feel quite confident that those 2 players want to stay. Obviously, now is a great time to do it. You don't want this really dragging on for much longer, but I've not heard any suggestions that this is not going particularly well or there are any concerns around those 2 at this front. So at this point, so I'm pretty positive on both Saliba and Saka, although I'm not currently aware of that being particularly close. But that could quickly change. What's interesting, I think, is those 2 guys are going to have to be among the highest earners in the squad. I think Saka you'd imagine, probably end up being the highest earner in the squad. And does that set a sort of cap on future recruitment? Can you ever sign someone who earns more than Saka? Can you ever get someone who's like ahead of the star boy in the pecking order? Probably not. So that kind of sets a cap.
But you wouldn't need to, Sam. Because I think he's that high in the world's pecking order. He's one of the best players in world football right now.
Yeah, but let's say they put him on, I don't know, 300 grand a week. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just fucking a figure out 300 grand a week, and they want to sign someone who's top class winger from Real Madrid, i.e., someone like Rodrigo. If Rodrigo wants 350, you can't do it. That's more than Saka. So, do you see what I mean by the cap? In a way, it kind of sets a cap to an extent. But equally, the other side of it is if he gets loads, then obviously other players will think, well, I should be getting a similar amount. So these are always really delicate, not just with the player themselves, but also with the impact for recruitment and sort of squad building.
Of course, and listen, if Saka is the highest paid player and the other players are knocking on the gaffer's door saying, "Oh, look, pay me the same," well, the question back from the gaffer will be, "Where's your output?" Deliver on the same level that Saka has over the last 2-3 years, and you deserve it. And there's a couple of sort of tongue-in-cheek comments here. Isak, when we sign him, maybe he'll be getting more than that. But pause on that for a second. Ethan Nwaneri, though, 5 years. Yeah. Great deal for the club. I mean, there was no demand about extra game time, and David Ornstein mentioned something about a changed role, maybe playing more centrally.
Yeah, as far as I know, there was nothing like a demand of game time.
Okay,
that's not the sort of thing Mikel Arteta would do anyway. He picks the team based on what he thinks the team needs. He's not picking it based on what someone's asked for in contract negotiations. So, yeah, I don't think that's true. I've not had any information to suggest that's right. I do know, though, that, and I know people don't like hearing this, but like there was a bit of concern at one point in this summer within Arsenal that the talks weren't going particularly well. There was a real fear for a bit, but obviously, thankfully for Arsenal, that's gone in the right direction. And Nwaneri always wanted to stay, and David's reported that too. And you kindly sort of mentioned that I got the story last week about the signing of the deal, but I should say that David and James Nicholas at The Athletic both kind of led the way on the talks on that front. So, full credit to those guys. But yeah, it's great news for Arsenal. Can you imagine the sort of misery if he was playing for someone else? It'd be horrible.
Don't. You've already ruined my Monday evening, Sam. Let's not think about Nwaneri, the Chelsea shirt.
Or Germany or whatever. Like it would have been a really unpleasant sight. This guy's one of the great Arsenal talents of the past 20 years. Like, let him grow. Obviously, it's not going to be easy getting him in the team, finding the right space for him, but he's 18. It's fine. let him grow, let him play, and give him his chances, and he'll take them.
It's so exciting. I mean, with Miles Lewis-Skelly now, Gabriel Magalhaes, Nwaneri, if Andrea Berta can get those two on the right-hand side done, either by the end of the window, by the end of the calendar year, that'd be sensational business for Arsenal. Let's turn our attention away as we bring the show to a close and just talk about Liverpool a little bit. They're sort of moving mad. Hugo Ekitike has been sorted, or here we go. We've had the confirmation today. But I do want to lead the conversation to Alex Isak. There's some really funky stuff going on. I mean, apparently Saudi are interested in him. He didn't turn up. Eddie Howe, of course, talking about him, didn't want to sort of have him in the stadium because of the speculation. What do you make of it, Sam? Any chance of him moving? Any chance of him maybe staying in England? I mean, could it be Liverpool? Could it maybe be us? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to try and find my colleague Luke Edwards' piece from today. Because he's very much our Newcastle guy and he's really connected to it. But the thrust of it is that I think from Newcastle's perspective, as far as Luke knows, he is just simply not for sale at all. End of conversation. And I think and I don't know this, but if Isak did want to go, then things have not worked in his favour this summer because Newcastle have consistently failed to get the players they want. I mean, we talk about sort of Berta's ability to get deals done. Newcastle, sadly for them, have been the absolute opposite. It's been horrific. I mean, they went for Brian Mbeumo, didn't get him. Liam Delap, didn't get him. João Pedro, didn't get him. Ekitike, didn't get him. They also quite liked Cunha, didn't get him. Dean Howson, didn't get him. And now James Trafford, seemingly going to Man City, is not getting him either. So that's like a list of like 10 players they wanted, and they've got one of them, which is Anthony Elanga. So like, it's one thing not being able to sign the players you want, but to then follow that up by selling your best player would be pretty insane. And I don't think they have any need to do that. But equally, look, if Isak kicks up the biggest fuss ever, it's hard. We've seen that in football history. It's really, really hard. And I'm interested by the Saudi link. I mean, Saudi own Newcastle.
Yeah. So, it's really weird. It's been playing on my mind all afternoon. Yeah. There's something's boy. I mean, for Eddie Howe to openly admit it's the speculation, Sam. We didn't waste a preseason friendly, for goodness sake, Eddie. What's the harm? Just take him to Celtic. It doesn't matter. But like, for him to admit that something is going on. Liverpool and all the Liverpool sort of ITKs are talking about, look, there's going to be 1 or 2 sales and we're going to go big and our transfer activity is not done yet. And of course, Arsenal have always been interested in Isak.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one to watch, and I'm a little bit nervous as an Arsenal fan because if Liverpool were to do an absolute madness, you'd have to say they are absolutely cruising towards that Premier League title next season.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really disagree with that. But I kind of keep thinking that Liverpool won the league last year having signed no one. I mean, they signed, Frederico Chiesa. That's kind of it. And then people forget so quickly that, like, you know, we don't sign X, Y, Z, we won't win the league. It's like, well, actually, I think if you look through it, the teams that spend the most don't always improve. I mean, maybe over time they do, and depends on your sample size, but it's a lot more to it than just bringing people in. But equally, it'd be hard to look at Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak in Liverpool shirts and think, oh yeah, they've got worse. Like, it was just not going to happen. With Isak, I mean, Liverpool have spent a lot of money already, and they've got sort of players who they can sell. Talk about Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez, for example. I wouldn't rule it out. Would you rule it out?
No. Man, Sam, you've ruined my week. I'm not going to lie.
I know, I'm so negative. So negative. I think it's highly unlikely, given what my colleague Luke is reporting, and obviously the Newcastle side of things. But I'm not ruling it out. Although it's interesting because Ekitike is a very sort of similar player to Isak. Like, they're kind of like the same build, same positional, sort of play in the same areas, sort of score similar types of goals. I think, like, you know, it does seem odd. It would seem odd to get them both. But I really can't imagine the sort of finances required in doing that.
That's Michael Edwards.
As for Arsenal, go on. I mean, look, let's chuck a bone out there. I've got no information to suggest it, but like, maybe the hold up on Gykeres is because they're seeing how Isak's going. Could be.
There you have it, ladies and gents, boys and girls. The Sam Dean bomber. Get quoting. Get the aggregators are watching. They are ready.
God, if they aggregate that, then they're taking the piss. So don't do that, lads. But yeah, it's. I don't think that's the case.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. Listen, Sam, it's been really good fun. There are just shy of 1,000 of you watching live on YouTube right now. If you're tuning in for the first time, please do. Follow the Latte Firm on socials. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. It's massively appreciated that you guys are tuning in on this Monday evening. Just a quick plug before we go. There was a great video on our new look attack. It's on the channel feed with Pythag in boots. Many of you will be very familiar with him and his channel, also working for the BBC. We looked at what Arteta would need to do to get the best out of Madueke and, of course, Viktor Gyökeres as and when he signs. We are going to leave it there. I think, Sam, it's been a real pleasure. Enjoy the next few weeks, the break or the run up into the new season. If anybody wants to follow Sam, he's available at Sam J Dean. Sam, of course, writing at the Telegraph. Sam, it's been a pleasure. Really, really appreciate you making the time. So thank you for that.
Before you let me go, I'll let you go. I'm going to ask you one question, one word answer. Assuming Gykeres joins in the next few weeks, as we expect, who starts up front against Man United, Gykeres or Havertz?
It'll be Havertz. It's not a one-word answer. I want it to be Gykeres, but it'll be Havertz because Arteta loves him. And
that goes back to my previous point.
It does. Yeah, you've done it. You've seen me and raised me. I've talked, by the way, for those of you watching, wondering why I think that, check out the last couple of videos on the channel feed, because we've been talking about that at length. Sam, thank you. Really appreciate you as always. And to the viewers, thank you so much for joining us tonight on this Monday night. We'll be back tomorrow with Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk, and Ben Jacobs will be joining me at some point later this week as well. So keep it Arsenal. Thank you for watching. Look after yourselves. Stay dry. I think it's just started raining again in London. And take care and good night. Bye for now.